Adrenal glands consist of two distinct parts. A central part, called adrenal medulla. That accounts for about 20% of the gland. An outer part. That accounts for approximately 80% of the gland. Adrenal cortex. Our focus here is the outer part. The adrenal cortex, which originates from mesodermal tissue. Mesonephros, that gives rise to the renal tissues. Well, the cortex is made up of 3 zones of tissues, and each of these secretes different hormones. Since they are secreted from adrenal cortex, we call them adrenocortical hormones, all of which are steroids in nature and are synthesized mainly from cholesterol that is absorbed directly from the circulating blood. Well, the outer zone is the zona glomerulosa, where zona means belt and glomerule means little ball, because its cells are closely packed and arranged in spherical clusters and arched columns. It secretes hormones called mineralocorticoids, named so because they affect mineral homeostasis. Now, the middle zone is known as the zona fasciculata, where the word fascicle means little bundle. It is the widest of all the 3 zones and consists of cells arranged in long, straight columns. Cells of this zone secrete the hormones glucocorticoids. Here again, name is suggesting that they affect glucose homeostasis. Next comes the inner zone, known as the zona reticularis, where the word reticle is from network. As cells of zona reticularis are arranged in branching cords, they secrete hormone named as androgens, where the word andro is from a man, thus clearly indicating these steroid hormones have masculinizing effects. These are also known as gonadotropins. You can remember these layers by the mnemonic GFR, glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis, from outer to the inner layer. Now, we discussed that the acute stress is managed by the hormones from adrenal medulla. While what happens in the long-term stress is that our hypothalamus releases corticotropin-releasing hormone, abbreviates as CRH, that targets the cells of anterior pituitary to release ACTH, or adrenocorticotropic hormone. This hormone then acts on the target cells of adrenal cortex and stimulates cells of all 3 zones to secrete their respective hormones. You can also find a detailed video on adrenocorticotropic hormone on sqadia.com. Well, among these hormones, glucocorticoids are known to produce negative feedback to hypothalamic pituitary axis. This will reduce the secretion of adrenocorticotropic hormone, thus decreasing the secretion of these steroid hormones. ACTH binds to the receptors present on adrenal cortex. Now, let's see what happens next. Well, they start taking up cholesterol from the blood and convert them into pregnenolone with the help of an enzyme cholesterol desmolase. Now, remember this pregnenolone as an incredibly important substance, as it serves as a precursor to all steroid hormones of adrenal cortex. Well, the cells in the zona glomerulosa convert this pregnenolone into progesterone by an enzyme called 3-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, or 3-beta-HSD for short. Now, in the next step, progesterone is converted into 11-deoxycorticosterone, or 11-DOC, by the enzyme 21-hydroxylase. After this 21-hydroxylation, the next step is 11-beta-hydroxylation. That converts this 11-deoxycorticosterone into corticosterone by an enzyme 11-beta-hydroxylase. This corticosterone then forms our hormone of concern, aldosterone, which is a mineralocorticoid. This occurs by the action of enzyme aldosterone synthase, which is stimulated by an enzyme angiotensin II produced in the lungs. Angiotensin II, you might remember, is produced in response to low blood volume and blood pressure. Well, the aldosterone controls the reabsorption of sodium and potassium ions in the kidney. Aldosterone acts mainly on the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct of the kidney. It increases the expression of sodium-potassium at T-pace pump. Potassium from blood moves into cells, thus entering tubule and excreting out in the urine. What happens to the sodium then? Well, sodium ions move in the opposite direction, from cell into blood, to maintain the concentration gradient. Sodium moves from tubule into the cells, hence causing reabsorption of sodium. Along with the sodium, water also moves into blood, thus increasing blood volume and blood pressure as a result. Now that you know how aldosterone is produced from pregnenolone, how does it serve as a precursor for glucocorticoids? Well, pregnenolone and progesterone from zona glomerulosa enters into the middle layer zona fasciculata. Here, we have an enzyme 17-alpha-hydroxylase that turns pregnenolone into 17-alpha-hydroxypregnenolone and turns progesterone into 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone. 17-alpha-hydroxypregnenolone is then converted into 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone by the enzyme 3-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Now, this 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone is turned into 11-deoxycortisol by the enzyme 21-hydroxylase. Then, finally, by the action of enzyme 11-beta-hydroxylase, we get the glucocorticoid, cortisol. Now, what does this cortisol do? Well, cortisol increases the blood glucose levels, and that is done by increasing the gluconeogenesis. Cortisol also increases the breakdown of proteins into amino acids in muscles. Not only this, but it also increases lipolysis. That is the breakdown of fat into fatty acids. Cortisol also has weak mineralocorticoid action, that it raises sodium and water retention. Cortisol also decreases calcium absorption from the gut and increases calcium excretion in the kidneys, and increases calcium resorption from bones. It is also known to suppress the action and production of immune cells, and inhibits the production of cytokines and antibodies. Now, after zona glomerulosa and zona fasciculata, we have the inner region of adrenal cortex, zona reticularis. These cells, produce androgens. But how, is the question. Here, It begins when 17-hydroxypregnenolone and 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone from zona fasciculata make their way into zona reticularis, where 17-hydroxypregnenolone is converted into dihydroepiandrosterone, or DHEA for short, and 17-hydroxyprogesterone is converted into androstenedione. Both conversions take place by the action of 17-20-lyase enzyme. Now, this dihydroepiandrosterones is also converted into androstenedione by the enzyme 3-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. This androstenedione, obtained from either way, is converted into testosterone by the enzyme 17-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, or 17-beta-HSD. Now, the testosterone turns into estradiol, also called estrogen, with the help of enzyme aromatase. Now, testosterone, is the male sex hormone, while estrogen is the female sex hormone. Do remember that these are not produced solely by the adrenal glands. Rather, testosterone is mainly produced by the testes in males, while estrogen is produced mainly by the ovaries in females. Testosterone has role in developing male reproductive organs and secondary sex characteristics, like increased body hair, facial and chest hair, voice change, and upper body muscular build, while estrogen helps develop and maintain the reproductive system and secondary sex characteristics, like breast and pubic hair. So, that was an introduction of adrenal gland, where we covered the two parts of adrenal glands, adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex. Also, we talked about the catecholamines secreted by adrenal medulla and steroid hormones secreted by the adrenal cortex. The video has come to an end at this point. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Do not forget to give your thoughtful comments.
Explore our extensive library of over 1,800 video lectures to learn about a wide range of topics. Only on sqadia.com.